Tragedy in Port Charles, when maternal protection turns to violence. A critical moment in the Carly-Joss-Valentin triangle. The tension in Port Charles has reached a critical boiling point as General Hospital heads toward what could be one of the soap's most shocking moments. Jocelyn Jacques arriving at her mother Carly's home only to find fugitive Valentin Casadini there, leading her to believe her mother is in mortal danger. In a split-second decision fueled by fear and protective instinct, Joss fires a shot at Valentin, creating a dramatic confrontation that will forever change the lives of these three characters and send shockwaves through Port Charles. This pivotal moment represents far more than just a shooting incident. It embodies the collision of maternal love, deception, protective duty, and the tragic consequences when misunderstandings escalate into violence. The perfect storm, how we got here. To understand why Jocelyn would reach for a gun and fire at Valentin, one must first comprehend the dangerous web of secrets and manipulation that has been carefully constructed over recent weeks. When Valentin Casadini escaped from a prisoner transfer plane by parachuting into Port Charles, he didn't simply disappear into the shadows. Instead, he sought refuge at the home of Carly, setting in motion a series of events that would test family bonds and force difficult choices upon every member involved. Carly, remembering her own experiences harboring fugitives and understanding Valentin's position, agreed to hide him not out of romantic interest or friendship, but as part of a larger strategic alliance. This alliance between Carly and Valentin exists for one specific purpose: to bring down Jack Brennan, the WASB supervisor who has been secretly recruiting Jocelyn into dangerous spy work without her mother's knowledge or consent. Brennan manipulated Joss into becoming a WASB agent, even putting her in situations where she was forced to contemplate committing murder to prove her worthiness as a recruit. When Carly learned of this betrayal, her maternal fury knew no bounds. She made the difficult decision to align herself with Valentin, a man she had every reason to fear, in order to protect her daughter from a man who wore the face of a concerned protector while orchestrating dangerous manipulation. However, Jocelyn remains unaware of this alliance. From her perspective, her mother is in grave danger. When news of Valentin's escape reached her through Brennan at the WASB office, Joss's immediate reaction was one of terror. She knew that Valentin had once attempted to poison Carly with tainted champagne while actually targeting Brennan. She understood that her mother held significant emotional value to Brennan, making Carly a potential target for Valentin's revenge. Driven by this fear and by Brennan's directive to watch over her mother's safety, Jocelyn decided to visit Carly's home, ostensibly to check on her well-being, but also to gather intelligence about any suspicious activity. The misunderstanding that changes everything. When Jocelyn arrives at Carly's house with the best intentions concerned for her mother's safety and trained as a WSB agent to be suspicious and analytical, she enters a situation fraught with danger and deception. Carly has hidden Valentin away from sight, but despite her best efforts at concealment, Joss begins to notice inconsistencies. She spots the first aid kit hidden behind couch cushions, observes Carly's nervous behavior by the glass doors, and picks up on the tells that something significant is being kept from her. Carly, caught off guard by her daughter's unexpected visit and her perceptive questioning, fumbles through explanations that only serve to deepen Joss's suspicions rather than allay them. Before Carly can fully explain the situation or prepare Joss for what she's about to encounter, Valentin emerges from his hiding place. In that critical moment, Jocelyn sees exactly what she has feared most: a fugitive, a man she believes to be dangerous, in her mother's home. Her mind races through the worst-case scenarios she's been trained to anticipate. In her WASB training, she's been taught to assess threats quickly and act decisively. Everything in that moment: Valentin's sudden appearance, Carly's nervous demeanor, the hidden first aid kit, and Valentin's fugitive status combines to create a perfect storm of misunderstanding. Jocelyn believes she is witnessing her mother in danger. She doesn't know about the alliance. She doesn't understand that Carly invited Valentin to hide there. She sees only what appears to be a dangerous fugitive in her mother's home, and her protective instincts, honed by her WSB training, take over. In what she believes is an act of self-defense and maternal protection, Joss reaches for her weapon and fires, hitting Valentin and creating a moment of chaos and violence that will have enormous consequences for everyone involved. The moral complexity of violence born from love. What makes this moment so compelling from a narrative standpoint is that it exists in a profound moral gray area. Jocelyn's action firing at Valentin stems not from malice or violence for its own sake, but from a desperate desire to protect her mother. She is not a villain in this scenario. She is a daughter acting on incomplete information and fear. In many traditional narratives, a parent's child defending them from apparent danger would be celebrated as heroic. Yet in this case, the violence is directed at someone who is not actually a threat, and it erupts from a fundamental misunderstanding that could have been prevented through honest communication. This raises profound questions about the nature of protection and deception within families. Carly chose to keep her alliance with Valentin a secret from Jocelyn, believing it was necessary to protect her daughter from being implicated in harboring a fugitive or being forced to choose between her mother and her newfound career as a WASB agent. This protective deception, however well-intentioned, directly created the conditions that led to violence. Had Carly trusted Joss with the truth earlier, had she believed in her daughter's maturity and ability to handle complex moral situations, this tragic moment might have been avoided entirely. Similarly, Jocelyn's eagerness to believe that her mother was in danger, while rooted in genuine love and concern, reveals how the manipulations of others in this case. Brennan's narrative about Valentin as a threat and her WSB training in threat assessment can poison even the most loving relationships. Joss came to her mother's home prepared for danger, primed to see threats, and therefore saw exactly what she expected to see, rather than what was actually there. Consequences rippling through Port Charles. The shooting of Valentin at Carly's house will create consequences that extend far beyond the immediate drama of the moment. For Jocelyn, the realization that she shot an unarmed man or a man who posed no immediate threat based on a misunderstanding will be traumatic and transformative. The weight of this action, the knowledge that her protective instinct led to violence against someone her mother was actively protecting, will force her to confront difficult questions about her role in the WSB, her training, and her ability to make sound judgments under pressure. For Carly, this incident represents a failure of communication with her daughter and a validation of her greatest fears about what Brennan's manipulation of Joss has created. She will be left with a wounded or dead Valentin and the knowledge that her daughter shot him, all while still needing to keep the truth about their alliance hidden from Brennan, at least temporarily. She will face the agony of comforting her daughter while unable to fully explain why things happened the way they did. For Valentin, being shot by Jocelyn after finding refuge with Carly represents another betrayal in a life filled with them. Even though the shooting was based on misunderstanding rather than malice, the result is the same: physical harm and the loss of his primary sanctuary in Port Charles. This will likely force him to make new plans, seek new allies, or potentially accelerate his confrontation with Brennan. For Brennan, this incident becomes invaluable information. Whether he learns about it through official channels or pieced together through his surveillance and investigation, the fact that Jocelyn shot Valentin at Carly's house reveals that both Carly and her daughter are involved in some way with the fugitive. This could be the opening he needs to manipulate Jocelyn further or to threaten Carly with exposure and legal consequences if she doesn't cooperate with his agenda. The larger narrative about trust and deception. This storyline, with its centerpiece moment of violence born from misunderstanding, speaks to larger themes that General Hospital has been exploring throughout this narrative arc. The show examines what happens when institutions like the WSB corrupt traditional family relationships through recruitment and manipulation. It explores how deception, even when motivated by a desire to protect loved ones, can create the very dangers it seeks to prevent. It demonstrates how quickly love can transform into violence when information is incomplete and fear is high. Carly's decision to keep secrets from Jocelyn, Brennan's manipulation of Joss, and Jocelyn's willingness to believe the worst about a situation without full information all contributed to this moment. None of these characters set out to cause violence or harm. Each was acting according to their understanding of the situation and their assessment of what was needed to protect those they love. Yet the collision of these incomplete understandings and competing agendas resulted in a moment of violence that will mark all of them. The incident also raises questions about the militarization of Jocelyn's thinking. Her WASB training has prepared her to identify threats and act decisively, but this training has also made her more suspicious, more likely to see danger where none exists, and more prepared to use violence as a first response. Brennan has, in effect, created the conditions that led to his own nemesis being shot by the daughter of one of his targets. The irony is considerable, and it suggests that the manipulation of good people through institutions often produces unintended and tragic consequences. Looking forward, the aftermath and revelation. In the aftermath of this shooting, Port Charles will be reeling from the revelation that connects Carly, Jocelyn, and Valentin in ways that none of the characters had anticipated or intended. The truth about Carly and Valentin's alliance will likely come out, forcing Jocelyn to confront the knowledge that her mother and the man she just shot were actually working together. This revelation will test the mother-daughter relationship in profound ways. Joss will have to reconcile her image of her mother as someone being protected by a fugitive with the reality of Carly as someone actively conspiring against Brennan and the WSB. This moment also represents a crucial inflection point in Jocelyn's development as a character. Will this incident awaken her to the dangers of her WSB involvement? Will she begin to question Brennan's manipulations and narrative? Or will she double down, viewing this incident as evidence of Carly's poor judgment and questionable alliances? The answers to these questions will shape the remainder of this storyline and Joss's trajectory as a character. For Carly, this incident represents both a validation of her fears and a devastating outcome she tried to prevent. She sought to protect Jocelyn by aligning with Valentin and working against Brennan, yet in doing so, she created the conditions where her daughter ended up committing an act of violence. The irony of seeking to protect one's child and inadvertently putting them in harm's way is not lost on the narrative. Carly will have to figure out how to rebuild trust with Jocelyn while continuing to pursue her larger agenda against Brennan. Conclusion: violence as the ultimate failure of communication. The incident where Jocelyn shoots Valentin at Carly's house serves as a powerful indictment of the cost of secrecy and deception within families, even when those secrets are kept with protective intent. This moment of violence is not the triumph of maternal protection or successful threat elimination. It is, in fact, a complete failure of communication and understanding. It represents what happens when family members operate with incomplete information, when institutions like the WSB inject themselves into family dynamics, and when fear and protective instinct are allowed to operate without the moderating influence of honest conversation and mutual trust. As General Hospital explores the aftermath of this shooting, the show will be examining fundamental questions about family, loyalty, institutional manipulation, and the tragic consequences that can result when love, fear, and incomplete information collide. This is not simply a moment of action and violence. It is a moment that reveals the fragility of family bonds when subjected to external pressures and internal deceptions. The true victim in this moment may not be Valentin, but rather the family relationships that were damaged by the necessity of keeping him hidden in the first place. Next, we will learn about the complicated situation surrounding Portia Robinson, her unexpected pregnancy, and the two very different men who may shape her future, Isaiah Gannon and Curtis Ashford. Portia's life has been spinning out of control ever since she discovered she was pregnant. This was not a planned pregnancy, and it certainly wasn't something she intended to share with either Isaiah or Curtis. Her instinct was to protect herself and her child by keeping the news quiet, at least until she had time to process what it meant. But fate had other plans. When Portia suddenly collapsed a short time ago, everything changed in an instant. That medical crisis did more than scare everyone around her. It cracked open the secret she'd been clinging to and forced the question of who the baby's father might be into the light. From that moment on, Portia could no longer pretend this was something she could handle alone. The collapse was about more than physical stress. It was the culmination of emotional pressure that had been building for months. Portia has been juggling Curtis's arrest, the fallout from Nina Reeves exposing her, and the heavy weight of not knowing the paternity of her unborn child. Each of those issues would be enough to rattle anyone, but for Portia they all converged at once. She's also dealing with a divorce that has turned her personal life inside out. Her marriage to Curtis is not just strained, it's unraveling in front of the entire town. The image of Portia literally falling to her knees in pain is a perfect representation of how crushed she feels under the expectations, judgments, and betrayals surrounding her. The writers are clearly using this moment to show how dangerously close Portia is to breaking and how urgently she needs support, real, unconditional support. In the middle of this storm stands Isaiah Gannon, quietly but firmly holding his ground. When Isaiah questioned Portia, asking if she would have been honest with him about the baby, it was a turning point. That conversation wasn't simply about this pregnancy, it was about Portia's entire history with secrets. She told him plainly that she had lied once before about a child's paternity and had no intention of making the same mistake again. That confession carries enormous weight. For years, Trina Robinson believed Mark Taggart was her biological father. Behind the scenes, Portia had carried the burden of knowing she had conceived Trina while having an affair with Curtis during her marriage. That old lie destroyed Curtis's trust when it finally came out, and it continues to haunt Portia's choices now. By admitting all of this to Isaiah, she is trying to break the cycle of deceit that has poisoned her relationships. Isaiah's reaction to that honesty is what makes him stand out. Instead of recoiling, judging, or lashing out, he listens. The spoilers hint that Isaiah is genuinely falling in love with Portia, and we can see why. He's drawn not just to her beauty or her competence as a doctor, but to her vulnerability and her willingness to confront her past. Portia, in turn, has started to relax around him in a way she never could with Curtis once all those secrets came out. Their low-key Thanksgiving in her office, just the two of them sharing granola bars instead of a lavish holiday dinner, said a lot about their connection. It wasn't glamorous, but it was intimate and real. That small, quiet moment represented the kind of simple, steady companionship Portia has been craving. Isaiah gives her a sense of calm in the middle of chaos, and that may be worth more than any grand romantic gesture. Right now, Portia is focused on a very practical next step, waiting until she is safely past her first trimester to have a paternity test. It's a decision driven more by medical wisdom and maternal instinct than by romance or drama. Her priority is clear: the health and well-being of herself and her baby comes first. There's a certain maturity in that choice. Instead of rushing to get answers just to appease Curtis or to define her relationship with Isaiah, she is honoring her own body and her child's safety. That tells us a lot about where Portia is emotionally. She's slowly shifting from being a woman desperate to keep everyone happy to being a mother determined to do what's best for her child, even if it means some people have to wait for answers. Of course, the emotional stakes are far from simple. Portia and Isaiah undeniably have chemistry. Their scenes together carry a gentle warmth, a sense that they actually see each other as flawed human beings rather than idealized partners. But the situation is complicated by the presence of Trina, who is at the emotional center of all of this. Trina has already lived through one devastating revelation about her paternity. She spent years believing Mark Taggart was her dad, then had to face the truth that Curtis might in fact be her biological father. That alone would be enough to shake any young woman's sense of identity. Now she's watching her mother's world fall apart again, and the prospect of a new baby only intensifies her fear that everything familiar will slip away. Trina's main wish is heartbreakingly simple: She doesn't want her parents to split up. She's been clinging to the hope that Portia and Curtis might somehow salvage their marriage, as if sheer determination and love for their family could erase years of secrets and mistrust. But underneath that hope, the reality is grim. The relationship between Portia and Curtis has effectively been broken for a long time. The trust that forms the foundation of any marriage is badly eroded. From Curtis's perspective, Portia has lied too many times, and he no longer believes that what she says is the whole truth. He feels like every conversation with her carries another hidden layer, another revelation waiting to explode. For someone as proud and principled as Curtis, that may be a deal breaker he cannot come back from. While Trina is trying to hold on to the family she knows, Curtis's heart is already moving elsewhere. He remains deeply connected to his ex-wife, Jordan Ashford. Whether he wants to admit it or not, his feelings for Jordan never really disappeared. The spoilers underline that Curtis is actively championing this divorce from Portia, not dragging his feet or hesitating. That determination suggests that in his mind, he has already chosen a different future, one that involves Jordan in a central role. Portia has probably sensed this for a long time. On some level, she always knew that she could never fully compete with Curtis's history with Jordan. Even when Portia was married to him, she often felt like a runner-up, the woman who came after, rather than the woman who truly held his heart. Jordan's involvement in the latest chapter of this story only reinforces that painful dynamic. By stepping in to tell Curtis that Portia is pregnant, Jordan crossed a line that many viewers feel wasn't hers to cross. It wasn't her secret to share, and it certainly wasn't her news to deliver. Yet she inserted herself into the situation anyway, and in doing so, she once again shifted the power balance. Portia ended up looking like the one who was hiding something, while Jordan appeared as the truth teller, the one bringing honesty into the equation. From Portia's perspective, this must feel like a familiar nightmare being overshadowed by Jordan in matters that involve her own marriage and her own body. Jordan may have convinced herself she was doing the right thing, but the emotional fallout for Portia is real and raw. This brings us to one of the most delicate issues, Portia's discomfort with the idea of Jordan being involved in raising her child. If the paternity test reveals that Curtis is the baby's father, then Jordan will inevitably remain in Curtis's or baton by extension in the baby's life. For Portia, the thought of sharing motherhood moments, decisions, and milestones with the woman who has always felt like a rival is more than unsettling. It threatens her sense of agency as a mother. She doesn't want to watch Jordan hold her newborn in Curtis's living room or see Curtis and Jordan acting as a united parental team while she stands on the outside. That emotional undercurrent adds another layer of urgency to Portia's need to reclaim control over her future. And that is where Isaiah comes back into focus in a powerful way. Even if the child turns out to be Curtis's biologically, spoilers strongly suggest that Isaiah will remain unwavering in his support of Portia. He doesn't seem interested in being in her life only if the baby is his. Instead, he appears ready to step in as a partner, a protector, and a loving father figure regardless of biology. That kind of steadfast loyalty contrasts sharply with Curtis's pattern of pulling away when he feels hurt or betrayed. Isaiah has already acted as Portia's anchor during some of the worst moments of this ordeal through the collapse, the emotional confrontations, and the fallout from Nina and Jordan's interference. He offers not just romantic interest, but stability, understanding, and the promise of a healthier emotional environment. From a long-term perspective, the path that seems healthiest for Portia is the one where she finally lets go of Curtis. Hanging on to a marriage built on broken trust only deepens her pain and confuses everyone around her, especially Trina. Curtis has made it clear through his actions and alliances that he is already halfway out the door. Portia deserves more than to stand in a constant comparison to Jordan, waiting for the next betrayal or the next harsh judgment. With Isaiah, she has a chance to build something completely new, something that isn't rooted in old lies or unfinished business. A new relationship, a baby, and a fresh start in both her personal and professional life could open doors to healing she has never allowed herself to imagine. Imagine Portia choosing herself for once, finalizing her divorce, setting clear boundaries with Curtis about co-parenting if he is the biological father, and stepping fully into a life where Isaiah is her emotional partner, not just a temporary comfort. The baby could grow up in a home defined by consistency and mutual respect, even if there are complicated ties to Curtis and Jordan on the outside. Trina could also benefit from seeing her mother model a healthy relationship after years of watching tension and secrecy destroy their family unit. In that version of the story, Isaiah doesn't replace Curtis as a father or erase Taggart's role in Trina's life. Instead, he adds another layer of support to a family that has carried too many scars. In the end, the heart of this storyline isn't just about paternity, it's about Portia's transformation. She is being pushed to confront who she has been, what she has done, and who she wants to become as a mother, a partner, and a woman. Isaiah represents the possibility of forgiveness and forward motion. Curtis and Jordan represent unfinished history and painful comparisons. The baby represents a new beginning, but only if Portia is brave enough to build that beginning on honesty and self-respect. However the paternity test turns out, Isaiah's quiet strength and loyal presence may be exactly what Portia needs to finally step out of the shadow of her past and claim the beautiful life that has always been just out of reach.